what if a leader who is not amenable to French interests happens to come to power? Of course, they try to prevent that as much as possible, but what happens if they do? A great example of that is Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso, which at that point was called the Upper Volta. Thomas Sankara was an anti-imperialist leader who nationalized, went all the way in the direction of socialism, nationalized great parts of the economy and industry. He cut the wages of civil servants in half in order to undermine corruption. He renamed the country to Burkina Faso, which means the land of the upright people. And what's more, in terms of the African continent as a whole, he put forward a bold anti-imperialist message, hinging in particular on the CFA franc but non-payment of the debt. In the summer of 1987, he appeared at an all-African summit and appealed to African leaders to join Burkina Faso in refusing to pay the debt that had been taken from the imperialists. He said, prophetically, that if Burkina Faso stands alone in refusing to pay, I will not be here for the next conference. He was not there for the next conference because in October 1917, he was assassinated by his right-hand man, Blaise Compaoré, supported by French imperialism. Blaise Compaoré then ruled until 2014 when he was deposed in a revolution. So if you toe the line, you'll get support, you'll get development aid, which goes straight to the state and is then distributed. This is a big part of the source of the corruption which is endemic in so-called African democracy. And of course, when liberals like The Economist write, oh, the problem is they're so corrupt, their economies don't develop because the state keeps on being so corrupt and the legal system doesn't work and politicians just pocket the cash. If only they weren't so backward, if only Africans weren't so inherently corrupt and tribal, then they would actually know how to spend their money. What we can see from this is the source of corruption in Africa is entirely foreign imperialism, who deliberately set up a network of corruption in which development aid is probably the central pillar, which basically cuts across the development of an indigenous capitalist class. The capitalist class in Mali, for instance, is basically just the managers that French companies put on their boards, and the state. The government. Many companies are actually state-owned in Mali, which shows that state ownership does not equate to socialism. The reason that so many companies in capitalist Africa are state-owned is because the individual capitalists have so little capital and are so unable to compete that they have to basically use the state as a collective capitalist in order to absorb aid and extract a profit. And much of this corruption is effectively profit extraction through the looting of the state, because that's the only way that the developing or non-developing capitalist class can actually gain any profit at all. Just to give you a concrete example, to paint you a picture. In Mali, a German liberal pro-capitalist research institute called the Bertelsmann Stiftung Index, apparently, apologies for my German, whose purpose is to trace how countries are doing in terms of market democracy, market economy and democracy, not a Marxist organization. It found that in Mali there were 4,000 civil servants who never turn up to work, but still draw a salary. In Burkina Faso, the only people who have access to state healthcare are civil servants. In other words, and French companies will often put minority positions on boards to local individuals. Again, it's all, it's sharing the wealth, isn't it? Oh, they will pay a share of their profits to the Niger government, for instance, in relation to uranium mining. This, of course, is all going into the pockets of their cronies, who, if they don't follow the line, will simply be replaced by everyone else. So there is an objective need first of all, there is an objective limit suppressing any internal capitalist development in these countries, an absolute dependency on foreign imperialism, but also a constant machinery whirring away to make sure that an independent capitalist class does not exist.